Hello and welcome to Genealogy Quick Start. I am Shamel Jordan, your host. And please, are you subscribed to our newsletter? There's the QR code right there. Please subscribe to our newsletter. It's also available in all of our uh, notifications. How you doing? Today we have another wonderful show with two new quick starts talking about subjects that we may have met not or may have not touched. But one of the things that we're touching today, and we are going to talk about stories. We have a super extra special guest today. And I'll tell you why she's extra super special. She's gotten something new in the genealogy world that I think only maybe three people have this thing that she has. And we're going to talk about that when she comes on. I'm talking about Karen Stanbary. And what I wanted to talk to you, she's going to talk to you about today is writing an evocative story, family story. So we're gathering all this stuff. And we love to get together at conferences and on Facebook and with other genealogists to tell these crazy things that our people have done, right? Sometimes it's kind of like, regular, but we got some people who are doing some fun things. And so I definitely encourage you to think about bumping up your oral history game. Have you heard of this association called the Oral History Association? Here they have this book called Using Oral History in Community History Projects. So many of us have gone beyond our normal genealogy addiction of researching our own people, and we have jumped and we are now swan diving into a whole community. I invite you to use proper oral history techniques. This little guide that you can get from the Oral History Association can help you with that. Did I tell you about Jim and Michael, what they're talking about? They always are, I'm going to use the title, keeping it on the level. They have yet another way to make sure that when you're doing research, you're not leaving anything on the table, that you are checking all the different available levels. How do you even know what a level is? How do you know where to get these? Jim and Michael are going to tell you. So while you are putting in the comments, we want to know where you are. We want to know if you're a member of a genealogy group, especially if you're a member of a genealogy group, because guess what? What's better than genealogy groups for learning genealogy and getting closer to your ancestors? So save some genealogy souls out there by representing your genealogy group in the comments. It doesn't matter whether you're watching us live or recorded. Let us know. I love to see the locations and groups popping up. Without further ado, let me bring on the top quick starters in the world, not the United States, the world. Okay, that's how we do it in the United States. Columnist and editor James M. Beidler, the gold medalist in my world. He's the gold medalist, and here we are. I have to have two gold medals. You guys must be like some kind of a team. Michael John Neal.
And here I thought I was getting the bronze. I really did. That's what I thought.
No, you're the best team in genealogy world. Okay, I gotta tell you, you kind of told me that when you said a couple not too long ago that you seem like you kind of mesh. Man, am I getting stuff about you guys kind of meshing and being a little funny? I don't know what they think is funny about you. Wow. So tell me.
I think you're tarnishing those medals now. So.
They're going to look like bronze in a minute. Yeah, if we're not careful.
So we have some folks out here. Of course, we have Paula Moen from West Defford. Hello, Paula. Hello, Kathleen Kelly from Indiana. Indiana Historical Society is like one of my dream spaces. Sometimes I just sit back and I dream like I wish I was there. They have a great research place. The people help you. But what I really love, besides that nice little like canal looking thing out there, the cafeteria has the best peanut butter and jelly sandwich I have ever eaten in my life. Have you guys been to the Indiana Historical Society?
No.
You have,
Been a
Michael.
while. I have, but Jim doesn't have any relatives outside. I forget what state it is, but I've got people from Indiana, so I need to
So
go
let's
back.
see who. Yes, when you go there, the peanut. I have to check it out. I'll look online and see if it's still there. Best peanut butter and jelly sandwich ever made in the world. So, how are you, Cynthia Cruz from Topeka Genealogical Society? Jim saying hi to P. Hey, hey, Kathy Wiseman, how are you? Terry Burks, how are you? It's so nice to see your name. Columbus, Ohio, the #1 genealogy group for Genealogy Quick Start, AAGHSC, as well as she says Chicago in the house. The black and gold is here. That's what they wear. Kathy says still in Ohio. Ohio is a great state. The Midwest is a great research place. Valerie Ann representing you know where, Philly area with the Genealogical Society of Pennsylvania. Owinda Marchbanks is here. Hello, Owinda, Chicago and AAGHSC. Hello, Gene. We have another Philly here. We have 2 and 2, Chicago and Philly. Chicago and Philly. Hello, Debbie Hutchinson from Dallas, Texas. Genealogy Friends of Plano Libraries. I love Friends of Libraries. Jim or Michael, have you ever been a friend of a library? How do you do that? There, I'm gonna find out.
They're usually groups that help to support the library and do some fundraising and things of that type. There's enemies of libraries, but that's a whole other topic we're not going to get into today. We're going to let you go through the rest of the comments before I say another word.
Don't ban any genealogy books. All right. So you guys came up with another cool quick start, which I really appreciate. So let's go ahead and jump right in. And you're going to tell us exactly what are we talking about today with keeping it on the level. What does that actually mean?
It's gonna mean, well, a couple of things in my mind, and I think Michael's gonna add some detail to it. But first of all, not to neglect any level that records might be found at. Whether it's local, whether it's all the way to national or in between, records can be found. And then the second thing is that a type of record group might be found at more than one of these levels. And we'll have some examples for that too.
And Michael, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Well, Jim really kind of summarized it. You want to make certain you look at all that. If we're talking about, I don't like this shining in the top of my head. This light is something different today. But usually genealogists, we talk about local records at the county level and then the federal records. We don't want to forget there's other levels of records might exist at that we want to keep in mind. And it's not just government or civil records that have different levels. Churches are the one that comes to mind where there might be records at a variety of different levels. We want to make certain that we're accessing all of those. And I think what Jim talks about with there might be one record that might exist at various levels as tax records. We don't want to get people depressed and mention taxes, but there might be federal taxes, there might be county taxes or local taxes, and some of those records can help us to get some additional clues. And you don't want to assume just because you've used tax records at one level that there might not be other jurisdictional levels that have those same records. And
that's a very important point because any type of record group, I just about want to bop people when they say, "Oh yes, I have the death record." No, you have a death record. You have a death record. You have a census. You have a tax list, and there could be many of them.
at a variety of different levels.
So, are you guys able
space
to?
there?
So, are we ready to do this quick start?
Yeah.
All right. So, for keeping it on the level, step 1 is to choose an ancestral family. Okay. Of course, we're going to start with choose somebody. Step 2 is to narrow down the time period. So, example, and why is this important?
Well, it's this type of strategy kind of works best. If you're talking about one lifetime, for instance, or one, I mean, maybe best to say one family group's lifetime, which could be parents and their children, and take it from the parents' birth to the deaths of the children. For instance, that might be enough of a time for you to uh, put all these different levels into play.
Okay, I like that because you're it's a great idea. So
I'm not
we
sure. I'm
narrowed
not
it.
sure how narrow that is because that still could be quite a number of years. But I get
Yeah.
I
So
especially if
make
you've
us
got.
narrower, Michael.
I would just go. Well, it kind of depends on what your problem is, and Jim's got that's a good way to start. If you're really stuck and you're totally clueless, I would maybe focus on a certain part of a person's life. But you've got to look at their whole lifespan, and the thing is that things can change over time. What might be true when they're born or when they're in early adulthood might not be true with how records are organized and kept when they are at the end of their life. So you want to, when we talk about looking at all these levels, you also want to keep in mind what changes could have been taking place in record keeping practices and in jurisdictional levels as time marches on, even during your time period that you've picked.
Yeah, that historical part really helps with the records. So we narrowed it down to a time period, and now we're going to move on to step 3, which is to determine all the levels. So this is the juicy part. How do we do this? How do we know that there actually are levels, and how do we climb? Yeah, tell me.
Michael, you said you were going to handle it.
I said I was going to handle that right. I was going to pass it off to you. No, for the records you do have. There's a couple ways that we can do this. Look at the records that you do have. There'll be clues to different geographical, political levels in those records. You might have a death record that's a county death record that lists the township where they were living in. The census will give you the township where they were living in, and things of that type. If it's certain parts of Europe, you'll want to read some information about the location. Get a good handbook or a source guide to that area. It should mention the different jurisdictional levels that took place. Um, Looking at maps would be another place to get an idea of those jurisdictional, levels. Some maps will show you where the school district boundaries are, in addition to other boundaries of things that could be helpful. So, and when you see a different political unit on a map, you want to ask yourself, what records could there be for that level there might be none at all, but you don't know until you look.
And I would also say that in addition to looking for levels of political jurisdictions or levels of church denominations, also levels of repositories. Yeah,
Mm.
because sometimes you have your state libraries and archives and genealogical and historical groups. You traditionally have ones on the county level, some that are regional with a bunch of different counties. But sometimes the very most valuable ones might be the lowest levels jurisdictionally, of just covering one township or one town or one type of area. because that's where the true local experts might be, who might know how. They not only know the records, they know the families and how all those families interconnect.
Right. They would know the idiosyncrasies. I mean, the idiosyncrasies of the location. We're laughing about that, but that's why if you get someone who's a state expert or knows the entire state, that's fine. But they might not know the nuances of what's true in one certain county in the northeastern corner of the state that has some little idiosyncratic issues with how things are organized, or they kept a record that wasn't kept anywhere else, or whatever the case may be. And just like Jim mentioned, that's why you want to reach out to individuals knowledgeable at all levels, because sometimes the people really familiar with the local level might not be aware of what records there are at the state level that could help you as
Very
well.
true.
So you want to reach out to everybody at all levels. Don't just focus on one.
Correct.
So you guys both set me up to jump in on your levels conversation, because when the first time that I went to the Alabama State Archives, and that's where I met Francine Taylor, mentor. But from there, like, her people told me about the people. They said, well, which counties are you doing? And they told us who the local people were. And that's where we met the country genealogist. Why was he the country genealogist? Well, we pulled up into his yard, right? They said that he had these 2 double wide trailers full of books, right? And we were like, what? And so when we pull up into his yard, big, beautiful yard with these giant peacocks just like sitting on the old trucks, like, I felt like pulling out my camera. I did pull out my camera. I need to go look at those pictures. But when the county was throwing away books, they would call him and he would back his truck up. And this man spent his time looking for all the Black people in all these records. This is not a Black man. And creating an index. When you said the people at the lower levels know the stuff, this is the kind of stuff that you learn. And one final thing, you guys talked about levels within a record set, like the Freedmen's Bureau records. Those have levels. You have the field office, which is the closest to the people. Like Jim, you were talking about, they're closest to the people. But those, whoever was in charge of that, they had to report up to the person who was in charge of the state. So you have the assistant commissioner's records. And the person in charge of the state, guess what they had to do? They had to report to DC. They had to report to the headquarters. So those are levels as well. So Jim, thanks for clarifying that it wasn't just location-based or geographic.
Yeah.
One thing also to remember about some of these people, particularly those at the local level, they might not be a member of the APG, and they might not be a CG, and all these other organizations that have a lot of outreach, because many times they're interested in their own little area and their own little people, and they're not worried about all those other things. I'm not saying those things don't matter, but to some of these people at the local level, those things don't matter. And they're not a member of the blah, blah, and the blue, and the whatever it is. And that's why it's important for you. You want to look at those organizations. That's why it's imperative for you to do things besides those organizations. When you're, especially at the local level, a lot of those people are not members of those national organizations.
So yeah, did we miss any levels? We're going to move on to step 4, but if we missed any kind of levels that you think that, would benefit, put it in the chat and I'll share it with everyone. So we have step 4 is to research online at those levels. So guys, again, what's your favorite place to research the levels online?
Depends on where we're talking about. Like for Germany, for instance, they have a kind of a gazetteer site that called GOV, where it has like a family tree chart of where a village, what jurisdiction a village was part of over the last 200 years. And Germany has what I call a non-linear political history, because they slice and dice and are parts of different units. So that's very valuable for me with the German stuff.
Most definitely.
You could,
Um,
and you could look
mhm.
at the Family Search wiki. You could look at the Family Search catalog,
Yes.
make certain you're browsing all the levels in there. Those and even local gazetteers, statewide gazetteers, and national gazetteers would be some places to look um, as well.
All right, let me share what Kathy has. And I forgot, you guys have like tons of records to share. Kathy, I love that you shared this and reminded us. She said, we have a local librarian who, for over 40 years,
Wow.
would scarf things from the county courthouse. She was over 90 when she passed away and still working. That's why you got to be boots on the ground. You got people like that doing that, putting the work in. So let's look at the last step and then look at your all the records you're sharing with us. So the last step, of course, would be to create a to-do list for repositories at all levels. What's a great way to find these repositories? Is there a great place to go to get that list so you can start figuring out which ones to go to?
Well, Michael mentioned in passing the Family Search Wiki. That might be a good place to start.
Agreed. Let's look at some of these records. What do we have here?
Yeah, here I chose first a couple of tax lists, and this is honestly something that I have not done well in the past because I kind of like, oh yeah, I've seen the tax list, yeah,
Yeah.
but but and these provided a real good contrast from the early 1800s, where um, the state tax list here was showing still from the early 1800s, showing the taxes still denominated in Pennsylvania pounds, uh, shillings, and pence, the old currency.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, and
Whew.
oh, yeah, and then the other. Let's go to the next slide. Maybe the next one. Yeah, there. And then the one kept on the county level. That one was already in dollars and cents. But interestingly enough, because I'm kind of comparing, what
Mm-hmm.
evolution.
Mm-hmm.
This one's in German script. So
Mm.
so this is a real old school tax collector that was
Mm-hmm.
creating this list, and also showing you that different levels may have different tax collectors. It's not all one system. So
Wow. I thought they were cool when you sent them to me. Now they're even cooler. I got to go
yeah,
back and look at them.
yeah,
Talk to us
yeah,
about this 1820 U.S. Census for Bloom Township, Columbia
yeah.
County.
Well, and I think a lot of us probably are familiar that a fair number of states have censuses as well as the U.S. Census. This is U.S. Census from 1820. It only has the name of the head of household, but it then has tick marks in various age categories for males, females, and enslaved people. So that it's working its way up to 1850, where we get every name for free people at that time. But uh, this is the federal one, and then if we move on, we get the Pennsylvania Septennial Census. Guess what?
Mm.
It was taken every 7 years. Septennial, get it? So,
Wait, I
uh,
thought it was taken. I thought it was taken in September.
ah, go away, Michael. Go away. And and now
I can
here,
make him go away. If do you really want me to make him go away?
no, no. Here we only not only just get the name of the head of household, we don't get any tick marks. It was basically counting up the number of taxable people to determine
Right.
representation in the Pennsylvania legislature. But the bonus fact that you get versus the federal census is you get their occupation.
That's
And
nice.
Whereas in the federal census, you don't get occupation again before 1850. So that's a cool thing. And you've got
That's super
everything from
cool.
shoemakers to brickmakers to even a gentleman, a synonym for retired in those days. So
So gentleman is not like royalty. You can lose it. Like you can lose it from one generation to the next.
you certainly can. Yes.
Yeah, it's called bankruptcy. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do we have here, Michael?
This is a warning out. Wait, is that the warning out? No, that is not the warning out. I didn't realize the description you've got there is wrong. The image is, I'm gonna have to take my glasses off. The image, this was from a Chancery Court case in Virginia, and we could spend a whole time on the court structure in Virginia. We're not going to do that. But
I would actually enjoy that.
That's a series of levels that we didn't mention before, is the court structure and what courts would hear what types of cases, was it depending upon what was being argued or debated. This was one that was at the Superior Court in Lynchburg, Virginia, I believe, and it involves one of my I think this one was over money. They were suing about a debt. It's not, ignore the title down there. It's not a warning out. But a knowledge of the court structure in Virginia at this point in time, I didn't want to just search the county court records. There were some other superior courts that had a larger jurisdiction in more than one county that I also needed to search. And initially, when I started looking at these records, I was unaware of that. And it can make it very easy for you to overlook things. Because again, I'm like, I need to look at the county. And in some cases, you have towns as well. But some of these courts were more than one county. And if you're unfamiliar with that, it can cause you to overlook things or assume they can't be your people because it's the wrong location. But if you would pop over to, there should be a couple others. I'm trying to keep track of our time here. This is a land record from Ontario that is, they're organized at the township level. Mary here is talking about a land claim that Rufus is assigned to Alonzo, but they're township level record, organized by township. So you've got to keep that in mind. It's just something at a different jurisdictional level.
Is that normal for Canada, or is St. Stephen's like a city? Is it like Philly?
This was in Stevens was the last name.
It was St. Stephen's. Sorry.
Yeah, Stevens was the last name, and the name, I think it was Yarmouth Township, and that was the organizational structure at this point in time. That was how they were organizing those. And then I think we've got one more. This is the warning out, and this was a town record from Addison, Vermont. And Samuel was being warned out. He was moving in. They didn't know how he was.
What does that mean? I was like, is that a town name? Like, what does warning out mean?
Warning out means he was moving in. They didn't think that he had a means to support himself, and he was being told to leave. He should go back from whence he came, because if he's going to be on the public dole, and I'm oversimplifying this and to keep on track of our time here, if he's going to be on the public dole, he needs to go back to the village he was from, and they can take care of him.
Oh, wow. What year was this? That's wild.
Oh, this is in 1811, I think. I think that's what I see there.
They were not playing.
1812. Yeah, 1811, 1812. What the time period for this. And these were, sometimes they were, and it's just, these are common records, but these are at the town level, not the county level, not the state level, because the villages were responsible for those people.
Cool.
And so they warn them, you better get out. Hence the phrase.
So where are warning out letters? Are these in the civil court records, possibly?
These are town records. They're town records.
Okay.
The town would warn them out.
Okay. So those will be like municipal records here.
In New England, yeah. The warnings out are a New England thing, not a United States thing. Yeah.
So New England was rough. Okay, they were. Was Pennsylvania like that, Jim? Were they like, look, were the Germans nicer, Jim?
According to Jim, Pennsylvania was just taxing you to death, because that's all he talked about today. It's been tax records.
All right, guys, thank you for that great quick start. Let's run through your steps for keeping it on the level. Step one, you want to choose an ancestral family. Step two, narrow down the time period. Step three, determine all the levels. Step four, research online at all those levels. And step five, you want to create a to do list for the repositories at all levels. Jim and Michael, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
All right, give me 1 second. Thank you so much for being here today for this quick start. I am always looking for ways that and of course for you too, that we could take some of all of this work that we're doing and all of these wonderful stories that just bring us joy to share and to tell people, and it brings us joy to find these records. How can we share this stuff with people so that these stories that we've unearthed, we've worked hard to unearth these stories, how can we keep them available for the future? So today I have a wonderful guest who's going to show you how to do that. And so please welcome Karen Stanbary. Hello, Karen.
Hi.
Welcome. Thank you so much for being on this show. And of
Thank you
course,
for
before
having me.
we get started, I want to ask you if you wouldn't mind sharing did you say you wanted to do this or not? I forgot. Is that a thumbs
I
up or
can do
thumbs
whatever you want me to do.
Okay. I forgot that quick. 1 minute genealogy story. How did you get started, Karen? And it's okay if it's a minute and a half, Karen. How did you get started? And how did you know that you were hooked on genealogy?
Okay. So like many people who were in high school in the late 1970s, mid 1970s, I was fascinated with the stories that Alex Haley told when Roots was published. It captured my imagination, and I thought it was really cool what he did. But then I got busy with my life and having a family and doing all the things, building a career and doing all the things that people do. And when my daughter became old enough to go to college, I wanted a hobby to keep from being a helicopter parent. I had only one child and I wanted her to experience freedom from her mother. So I returned to my hobby, my interest of telling family stories, telling family history, and poked around because I read and poked around, and I discovered this article by some unknown person named Elizabeth Shown Mills, who poked holes completely in Alex Haley's story in this scholarly article that she published, and I was crushed. I was absolutely crushed. So what I vowed to do at that time was to take a course by Elizabeth Shown Mills. So I went to IGHR and took her advanced methodology, and my eyes were opened to the depth and breadth of genealogy to tell family stories. And I never looked back.
So I actually had like a I had a mystic experience. I saw the light in Elizabeth Show Mills class. I seriously did. I was so tired. I'm not going to tell a story, but it really was a great course to take. So Karen, before we get going with your quick start, you have a new acronym within the world of BCG for the certification for genealogists. So you're a certified, we're used to CG, certified genealogist. Now, all of a sudden, I have seen, and you are one of the first people that I've noticed have 2 Gs, CGG. What does that mean, Karen?
Well, that's an add-on. It's a newly launched add-on credential for the Board for Certification of Genealogists. So you have to have the CG first, but then you submit work samples and are evaluated, judged for the Certified Genetic Genealogy credential, which shows that your 2 work samples meet standards for solving complex genealogy problems using a combination of documentary and genetic evidence. So yes, I am number 2. There currently are 4 certified genetic genealogists, but we've only been doing it for a few months now. And there's many people who have told me that they're working on it. Can I just tell a story about why I got into DNA? Because I hate science. I hate math. I did everything in my power in my academic career to take science without a lab because I didn't want to do a lab. But one day I was at the Salt Lake Institute of Genealogy, and there was a blizzard because those are in January, and I didn't bring any boots because I didn't have room in my suitcase, and I didn't want to walk to the library without boots. So I just went randomly into a talk that CC Moore was giving at that point for APG on DNA, and I immediately realized the power that DNA could unleash for me to get to more forgotten stories. I use DNA to get to stories because I'm a storyteller at heart. But that's why I got into DNA and I learned how to do it. And now that's what I do.
I am so grateful that you have done that because you just have some really interesting ways to do what you do. So thank you for that. And because you're such a wonderful storyteller, we are going to do, and we're going to learn from you with this quick start, writing an evocative family story. You know, we don't want to put people to sleep. Is that what you're saying?
Right. Because my family won't read the articles that I write, right? So they're not interested in that. And I believe that the reason all of us do genealogy isn't for begats and names and dates, but it's for the stories of resiliency that we find in our ancestral lines, in our family histories. And so I am all about trying to break off tiny pieces of these stories of resiliency and commit them to the written word in a format that our families will read and treasure and preserve.
Love that. And you have a great story here. I love how you're doing this. And you have some really cool records. One of them has a 4-letter word in it. I can't wait to say it. I can't wait to say it.
I don't want to say it. No.
Thank you for allowing me to say that on air. I love it. So, and I'm supposed to say it because it's the name of the record. So let's get started with your cool quick start, writing an evocative family story. So we'll go through the steps first, and then we'll take a look at your visuals. So step 1 is to choose an evocative story. So how do you even start with choosing a story? For me, that would be the hard part.
Well, so I believe that, my office, you can see in the background, there's pictures of my ancestors all over the place on the walls. And I believe that they want their stories told. So whichever one is speaking to me at the moment, I try to break off a tiny piece of their life and be able to tell the story. For this particular one that we're talking about today, I'm focusing on a family heirloom because we have this, my mother has this little 48-star flag that she kept wrapped in tissue paper through her entire life since she was 7 years old. And I wanted to tell the story of that little flag that can accompany the flag as it gets passed down through the generations. So my mom told me the story of when she was 7 that her favorite cousin gave her this flag, and on VE Day she draped that flag over the handlebars of her little tricycle and went pedaling up and down the block shouting, "The war is over, the war is over," ringing the bell, not even knowing what the war was, but still had that flag and was celebrating VE Day in a way that only a 7-year-old could do. So I wanted to tell that story, but I also wanted to juxtapose that story with the cousin who gave her that flag. And he was in the Air Force, well, the Army Air Corps at that time in World War II, and we knew nothing about him or his service. So I dug deep into the records to be able to juxtapose the story of what these two individuals were doing on VE Day, one 7-year-old and one 20-something-year-old from an Air Force base in England.
So wait a minute, Karen, are you saying that all World War II records didn't burn up?
No, all World War II records didn't burn up. No, they did not. Some World War II records burned up, like this guy's personnel file that would have been easy to tell me where he was and what he was doing as his service record. But, I never let that stop me. So
resilience. That's why you're looking to tell the resilient story, because you're resilient yourself.
That's right.
So we're going to choose a cool story, the ones that are talking to us. And so I like that. And I like how you took two things, like an interesting item, an item, and you're taking a story from that. We have interesting items in our house. So bravo for that. So step 2 is to do general genealogy research, and you will talk to us more about that when we get to your records. I want to make sure we have time for your records. Is there any? Oh, this is my favorite. This is absolutely my favorite. That's why I'm rushing past that other one. Is step 3. This is my new mantra for the rest of the year. Did you know that you have given me my mantra for the rest of the year?
No.
Research the story deep, not wide. So Karen, I'm a Hoover. Actually, I'm a Kirby, but I'm a Hoover. Like when I go in, I'm like, woof, like I'm taking everything with me. And so I would like for you to explain why deep is better than wide.
Well, if you're want to tell an evocative, compelling story, you're going to have enough detail, and you want it to be nonfiction, right? You can't make it fiction. You can't make it out of your imagination. You have to have enough details, deep details about what the players in that story were doing, and where they were and what the settings were, to be able to tell that story and document it. So you don't go wide, you go deep. Like, I don't need to know about every single battle that happened in World War II. I need to know what they serve for breakfast on Hethel Air Force Base. Right? So that's what I mean about that.
I love that. I absolutely love that. So we're going deep, not wide. Okay. I love that. I'm trading in Michelle Obama for a little bot for the end of the year. I'm still going to go high even when they go low. But today I'm going deep, not wide. So thank you. Let's move on to step 4, which is to determine what to include. This is very difficult. I'm doing a documentary and I've interviewed like 7 people and I have too much stuff.
Yeah.
How do you do this, Karen?
So you gotta pick so one of the things that I do in these kinds of stories is to let my footnotes do the heavy lifting. So I don't necessarily have to include the details about all of what the footnotes are saying. I can just put it in the footnotes. So that allows me to focus on the setting and the story. And then you can always get tons of historical context, but I'm very, very careful about what historical context or what images or maps will add to the story that I'm telling, and not just be a distraction. So I'm very selective. So
there's things that are just so cute and adorable, but they have nothing to do with pushing your narrative arc forward, right?
Right, exactly.
I love that. And I would love to hear, like, is there an example of something that you wanted to include, but you finally had to get control of yourself and, maybe take it out?
Yeah, I mean, this guy, Dick, that I'm writing about, this flight engineer on my mother's cousin, his brother was also in World War II over France, but he wasn't, and he did really cool things, and he was in the Army Air Corps, but he wasn't the one that came on the flag, right? So he got kicked, he kicked out because it would be distracting if I tried to tell that story. So, but
love that.
I found a memoir. I found a book with a guy's letters that he sent home that was in the same squadron as my guy, and they weren't trained together, and they were in the same flight crew, and so that got included, right? Because he was telling the story that my guy never spoke about because it was too painful.
Yes, find those diaries and writings of people who were
Right.
in the same. I love that.
Yeah.
Love that. I want to make sure we get to your documents because I could talk to you forever. Step 5 is to create a oh no, I'm on the wrong
That's
one.
not
Sorry.
me.
That's not you. I think your step 5 was to put the reader into the setting. So
Yeah.
how do we put the reader into the setting?
By using strong verbs and cool adjectives, by using thesaurus, getting the real thesaurus, not the one in the word processing software, but the real thick one that you could use as a doorstop, that thesaurus, and using that to select the best word to describe the settings. You know, you want to describe it, and you want to get your reader in there trying to hit at least 3 senses. You want to get sight, you want to get sounds, you want to get taste or smell or something, or whatever you can do. Try to get these words into the paragraph to tell the story that invoke the different senses. That helps them to empathize with the character, which is the next point.
And the next point is to write a story with empathetic characters. So how do you do that, Karen?
Because you're putting the reader into the story, experiencing what the character is experiencing. That helps the reader be able to empathize with what that person was going through. And it's kind of tricky because you still have to keep it nonfiction. So everything you're putting in there, you have to make sure you can document. And if you can't, you can use context or other contemporaries that are describing it and say they likely experienced this, that, or the other thing. You have to be very careful not to turn it into fiction. Because I'm calling this creative / nonfiction. So that's what I say.
Creative / nonfiction. All right, let's look at some of these documents. So tell us what this is. Beautiful.
Okay, so that's a B-24 bomber. That's the actual plane that my mom's cousin was flying on a day that I am focusing in my story on one of the missions he was on April 7th, 1945. And he was in that plane in the top turret in that little bubble on the top of that plane. And it is super hard to figure out the names of the planes. That's one of those things about looking at all the levels. You have to figure out the bomb group. You have to figure out the squadron. You have to figure out the serial number for the plane and the date of the plane and all of this stuff to be able to figure out which plane it is, because they're not named. The plane. These are names that the flight crews gave their, and some of them are dirty too, gave their planes, but they're not in the official records. They're not in the mission records. So you have to work really hard with flight serial numbers and pilots to be able to get to it. But I was so excited when I found that picture of that plane.
Lucky lady.
Some weird World War II forum thing by some guy whose grandfather was on that plane. So he had a picture.
God bless those forums. Love those forums.
Those forums.
Oh, I love this picture.
Well, that's my mom, as she was in May of 1945 on VE Day. And that's in Burlington, Iowa. And that's her that was pedaling her tricycle up and down her street, her sidewalk, shouting, "The war is over."
Who are these cool guys? I love these leather jackets.
So this is the flight crew that the cousin was on, and my guy is Cyberlane, the flight engineer, which is standing in the middle, and they posed. And the guy, Chandler, who's the tail gunner, who's standing there on the left, he was the one that his grandson published his letters home. And so he included this photograph in that book.
And there's your guy right there.
If I wouldn't have researched deep, I would have never found this picture. So, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Go deep, really deep.
I love this. Okay, now we're
Okay,
into mission reports. Tell us
so
where
I went and spent one day at the National Archives 2 in July. And I only had one day, and I was trying to pull up World War II mission reports. Now, by this time, I had figured out the bomb group, the squadron, some of that stuff, but it was all just a little bit murky. I was doing my best. I was using the indexes, and they brought me up a cart with like 40 boxes, which I naively ordered way too many boxes. There was no way that in one afternoon. And so, I was able to zero in on the box, and it had the mission reports for the 389th bomb group by chronological order. And I was going, you can go back and show that record.
I need to ask you a question first. You said that you got these mission reports from Archives 2
in College Park, Maryland.
So Archives 2, I thought, was civilian.
No.
Okay.
I mean, no. I mean, they have all these World War II mission reports.
All right, so let's look at these cool.
So I pulled up one for April 7th, and frankly, I only picked April 7th because I saw my guy's name on it. It was the first one I saw, right? Cyberlane RJ top turret on April 7th, and it was a pretty fat file, so I knew there had to be something interesting in it. That was my criteria. So this is actually the loading list that was filled out, completed by the pilot when they got assigned a mission. So this is for plane number Y on the squadron of 565 on the 7th of April, and there are the people who are flying on that particular mission. You can see my guys in top turret, and Dan Chandler, the guy who published those letters, who sent home those letters, is the tail gunner. That's because he was the shortest one, and he had to crouch down into that. So most of the stuff is organized by the pilot. So note that the pilot name is R.K. Evans. But that proves that my guy was on that plane on that day on that mission.
Oh, love that. Love that. And then here we have my favorite, the poop sheet.
Which I will not, I don't know why they call it a poop sheet. I have no idea why they're calling it.
It's not an acronym.
I don't know. I'm going to ask Rick Sarah. I'll ask him. But here, when the commanding officer lays out the missions in the morning, they say these are B-24 bombers, and they're flying in formation. I knew nothing about this when I started this project. All I was trying to do was write about a flag, but I had to learn about how they flew in formation, and you can see that these are 3 tiers, 3 levels, 3 tiers of planes flying in close formation to each other, and they flew this way to protect themselves defensively from enemy aircraft. Evans is in that middle layer. That was the high right flank, and Evans is right there in plane number Y. That's where my guy was flying. And in the very top, in the lead flank, at the top, you can see that the lead plane is being flown by a guy named Pilot Dallas, and the colonel of the entire organization was flying along with him in the co-pilot. I know this from the mission reports. And next to him was their major. He was flying next to Kunkel's, flying inside Kunkel's plane as co-pilot. So those are the lead guys, and then the high right is in the second level, and then the low left are the planes that are in the third level. So you could imagine how all the planes are stacked up. See, if you get this stuff, you can tell a story, right? Yes. I know where my guy was in the top turret to watch what was going to happen in this battle in the sky. Because of this sheet that we won't talk about the name of the sheet. Because of this sheet.
The poop sheet, the mission poop sheet. I love it. I love it. And then we have a bottom to the poop sheet. What's this part do?
This just shows you what squadron. These are those codes. Those letters are the codes for the planes and what position they were flying in and from what squadron. So that's how they notified the guys what time they were going to leave and that they were going to be assigned to this mission.
Okay, you got breakfast going on in here. Okay, gas load. So cool. So cool. I love these records. And archives too. I think the air makes you order too many records, because I do that every time I go. Oh, this flag! I love this.
So that's the little flag that my mom draped over her handlebars.
Oh,
That's the family heirloom that started the story, and it's framed now. And so I end my story with this 48-star flag. And that my mom passed it on to my brother and made this story go on and accompany this flag on its journey to demonstrate, to be a symbol of the resiliency and patriotism of the family.
so do you have siblings?
Yeah, I have 2 brothers.
So who gets the flag?
My brother.
Oh, okay. How did that happen?
He's a Boy Scout guy. They like flags. So, you know, it's
Okay.
cool. It's all fine, but I'm giving him the story. So it's a story it's a fully documented story. It's about 11 pages, but half of each page are footnotes. So when I put the footnotes to endnotes, it'll be much shorter than that. It's about 2,500 words is the story.
Wow.
Back and forth between my mother's viewpoint and this guy's viewpoint.
So would you like to read a small piece of it?
Sure. Do we have time?
Yes, we have time.
So I'm describing the battle that you saw the poop sheet for, and
I got you to say it.
Oh gosh, I can't believe I said it. And this battle was at the end of the war, and the Nazi air forces were horribly depleted, and they were becoming increasingly desperate. And this is the one day in World War II when the Nazis sent up what are like kamikaze pilots. Their mission was to go up and ram the bombers, not shoot them with projectiles, but actually ram them and try to parachute out while their plane disintegrated. So that's what happened in this day on April 7th, 1945. Dick likely had an unobstructed view from his top turret position in the high flank. The 2 hit B-24s disintegrated. Herbert's engine separated from the fuselage and fell end over end through the sky. Explosions blasted Colonel Herboth's body out of the cockpit. A fully inflated life raft floated surreally in the air. Pieces of planes bounced and ricocheted off each other to damage other planes in the squadron. A 3rd plane in the lead squadron was hit. Engines 3 and 4 burst into flames. It dropped out of formation and lost altitude. In a matter of minutes, the attack was over. The planes carrying Colonel Herboth and Major Tolleson were destroyed or on fire. That's the piece where I'm trying to put the reader into the setting. And this is a small little piece where I'm trying to help the reader empathize with my guy. Kill or be killed. Flax menacing black smoke in every direction. Falling shrapnel crowding the skies. The thud of an enemy projectile hitting the fuselage. The sight of ships bursting into flames. The anguish of helplessly watching a dying plane plummet to the ground, trailing smoke and debris, all the while frantically seeking the skies for the hopeful reassurance of chutes. Witnessing the destruction, debris, death, while rapidly spinning and firing the machine gun in hope of eliminating the enemy, in hope of surviving one more day.
Resilience.
Resilience.
You're capturing it.
Yeah.
I love your writing. I love your stories. I so appreciate you sharing them with us. And I want to go through your steps so that people can, for like the last, like you have 10 seconds, maybe, like, how do you do this? Do you think it's better to do this like in a writing group? Like how do you get started with this? Because I feel like it's a heavy lift.
Well, writing groups are always a good idea because you can bounce ideas off of each other and, just get your buddies. I always believe in genealogy buddies and one story, one small story, bite off a tiny little chunk. Don't write the definitive family history. You'll never just write one little story and then pick another story from a different branch of your family and write that story and then pick another story. And make it no more than 2,500 words. Make a rule and then it'll be short stories. Creative.
Fantastic. Let's run through your steps for writing an evocative family story. First, choose an evocative story. Second, do general genealogy research. 3, research the story deep, not wide. Step 4, determine what to include. Step 5, put reader into the setting. Step 6, you want to write the story with empathetic characters. Karen, thank you so much. Make sure you check out Karen Stanbary, genealogy.com, so you can learn how to write that evocative story. Let's bring Jim and Michael back somehow. Thank you, everyone. Get out there and write that story and take it. Keep it. What did yours say? Keep it at the next level. I forgot what you said. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.